Hello, my dear students of grade 5. I hope you are all well and doing fine today. Inshallah, we will jump to chapter 4, lesson 2, talking about inherited traits and what did we learn about genes and genetics and everything. So, as we did with your classmates in the school, I want each one of you guys to look to his parents and his siblings if you have any more relatives with you staying in your home, like grandmother, grandfather, some of your cousins. I want you to look at them and tell them if they look like their mother or their father, or do they share things with, like an eye color, a hair color, skin color, the shape of their jawbone or cheekbones, the shape of the lips, the nose, different things. Okay. And then you can hold a mirror and look to yourself and try to guess what did you get from your parents. Like, did you get your mother's eyes? Did you get your father's, for example, eyebrows or something? So, um, you know, with this experience or this experiment, you will learn that we share different traits. And traits here is like the skin color, the hair color, the eye color, if you have dimples or not, if you have freckles, if you use your right hand or left hand. That's what we call inherited traits. Inherited means it's passed to us from our parents, from our mother and father. Like dimples, for example, having freckles, these small beautiful dots on her face, those are what we call freckles. We sometimes share them from our parents, like we get them from our parents. The ability to roll your tongue, well, most people can roll their tongues, others cannot. You can try this now and go ask your relatives if they can do this too. Having an attached or free ear loop. Some people get mixed between them. Like, what do you mean by having a free or an attached one? So if you looked at this picture on the left, you will see that her ear loop is attached directly to her face. Can you see? While in this one, you can see a small gap. Can you see it? Between her face and the ear loop. So this one on the right is called free ear loop, and the one on the left is called an attached ear loop. You can add this to your experiment too. Being right-handed or left-handed is also passed to us from our parents. But do you know that most people can use the right hands to write with, or use it to eat or drink or do stuff with them? Not so many people use their left hand. Well, now we have desirable traits, right? Again, what do we mean by traits? There are genetic instructions that are passed to us from our parents. And these genes, as you guys learned, are found in the chromosomes inside the nucleus, which is the control center of the whole cell. Well, since some people have desirable traits, others don't, the same happens in animals and plants. So farmers used to breed horses with the desirable traits with other horses that they want their traits to be passed to their offsprings or to their young. So they thought maybe if we breeded a really strong horse with a really fast female horse, the babies will share both of their desirable traits, like they will be both strong and fast. The same for plants. They used to, after collecting the plant of the year, they used to pick the better plants or the best plants, the one with, for example, more fruit, more seeds, a bigger fruit, or a more tasty one, and then they used to plant it for the next year. So now they have more of the desirable traits they need or the desirable traits they want to their plants to be. So people thought in all times that these traits are mixed. Like if I breeded a purple flower with a white one, we will get a lavender flower. This is not right. It's not working this way. So, a famous scientist called Grigor Mendel was interested in the genes and how organisms share these genes. Like, how would a plant, tall one, be, you know, or produce a plant with a tall traits too? Like, why don't they share different traits? How are traits are passed from the parents to the offspring? So he was interested in doing this experiment with the plants. So he picked the pea plants. We all know it, so delicious. Why did he pick the pea plants? Because of two reasons. Number one is that they have distinctive features or different characteristics or different features that are really obvious to know. If you looked at here, he had two types of pea plants, one with a purple flower, the other one with a white flower. One was that of them was a tall stem, the other was with a short stem. So you can see the difference in the peas. One of them is green, the other is yellow, one of them is wrinkled, the other is round. So there are obvious differences between both plants. The second thing for choosing the pea plant is that they are self-pollinated. And you guys learned last year about pollination and how the male sex cells, which is pollen, moves from the anther to the stigma inside the same plant, which means that this plant will never share any of the genes from any other plant, not like the cross pollination. If you looked in here, you'll find the cross-pollination happening from one flower to another. So we're sharing genes between different flowers, but not the same as the self-pollinated one. In the self-pollinated flowers, the petals actually close on the flower, so they will never take any pollen from any other plant. Okay. Okay, if we looked at this picture, we will notice the difference between cross-pollination um, and self-pollination. Let me get to the slide. So here it is. Can you see these small structures or small microscopic? Not, they are not really microscopic. We can see it with our own eyes, but can you see how small they are on the bee's body? These are the pollen. Because last year we learned that plants have both male and female parts, well, some of them have male and female, both of them in the same flower, others are only male or female, but I mean, they also share these different sexes. In order for seed to be made, we need the male sex cell, which is found here, which we call pollen, this yellow circle. And we need this pollen to go through the female part to join the egg inside, and then the egg will be fertilized and the seed will be made. So if you looked in this moving picture, you will see that this type of pollination is happening in the same flower. So there is no change in the genes, no variations. Only tall plant will be grown if it only carries the tall trait. But if you looked at this one, you'll find the bee taking a pollen from one flower and transporting it to another flower. This is what we call cross-pollination. In this case, different genes will be shared, which means different plants will be, or different seeds carrying different plants with different genetic informations will be made. Not like the self-pollination in here. It happens in the same flower, so we're not sharing different genes. So back to Gregor's experiment. Okay, so again, he chose the pea plant for these two reasons, that they share different features, like he can see an obvious difference between both plants, and it is self-pollinated, which means he will not worry about it taking pollen from any other flower, which will cause, faults and mistakes in his experiment. So the pollination happens inside the same flower. What he did is that he cut the anther, which is responsible for making the pollen, the male sex cells, as you can see on the right in here. So this white flower will not be able to produce seeds now because it does not have any male sex cells or any pollen. And he took the pollen from the other flower and he cross-pollinated the white one. So he took again the pollen from the purple flower, or the plant with the purple flower, with a painting brush and pollinated the white flower. Can you see? So that was the first time يعني, for this plant to be cross-pollinated because it's a self-pollinated one. And he waited for the seeds to come out. If you looked in this picture, you will see those tall and short plants were the parents. That's right, because he breeded two pea plants, one tall and the other one was short. So he used to see that tall plants only produced tall ones and short plants only produced short ones because there was no cross-pollination. Now it was the first time for him to cross-pollinate these plants. So now the parents, tall one and short one. He waited for the seeds and then planted them, waited for them to grow up, and he found out that all of the first generation were tall plants. Can you see? All of them were tall. That was so strange because he just breeded a tall plant with a short one. So where did the short trait go? Now he left those tall plants, which is the first generation, to self-pollinate. He did not, use any of his tools anymore. He just left everything going natural and waited for seeds to be made, and then he took them, planted them, and waited for them to grow up. What was so surprise for him is that three of the second generation were tall plants and only one was short. Well, it was so strange because all the first generation was tall plants. Where did the short come from? So in this case, he found out that we have two types of traits. We have a dominant trait and recessive trait. The tall trait is the dominant one because it was the most expressed one, or the one that appeared the most. You can find it in the parents. You can find them the tall trait in the first generation. You can find it also in the second generation with more numbers. While short trait is a recessive trait, which means it's a weak one. It cannot appear more than one in this case, or in this experiment, because all of the first generation did not have any short plants, but they still carried the shortness trait, but it was hidden, appeared only in the second generation, which was one. So again, we have two types of traits: dominant trait and recessive trait. Dominant means it's strong, it will appear, while the recessive trait will only appear if there's no dominant trait with it. What do I mean by that? These are some examples of the dominant trait, like having brown eyes, rolling the tongue, using right hand, and having a free ear loop. Those are examples of the dominant trait. So most people can, use the right hand. Most people have brown eyes. Most people can roll their tongue, and most have a free ear loop. So what do we mean by factors of dominant traits? So we guys take half of our chromosomes, or half of our genetic information, from the mother and the other half from the father. So if we said that, for example, tallness, which is T, we'll present it with a T capital. Represents one factor, which means half of the chromosomes we carry from our mother, while another T capital represents also the tallness trait we take from our father. So we have two factors that represent the traits, one from our mother and the other one or the other half from our father. So guys, I have a problem with my mouse, I think. With my mouse. Okay, so what did we get from this one? The first generation of the plants, we had a parent, two parents, one with only tall traits, so he only carried tall factor, like two T capitals, while the other parent only carried the short trait, which we will represent with a T small. Now, what Mendel did is that he cross-pollinated both plants, right? So we had two parents, as you can see. One with two T capitals, and the other one with two T small because they only were self-pollinated, which means they only carried one type of trait, tall or short. Okay, now he breeded both of them, or he cross-pollinated both of them. Since the seeds or the tiny plants must carry half of their chromosomes or half of their genes from the mother and the other half from the father, we'll see that the offsprings of the first generation will only carry tall traits. Why is that? Well, let's see. So we have the first parent, which carried only T capital, right? And the other one with only T small, which means he was short one. Now let's see their offsprings. How would they look like? They will take only a half from the first parent, which is T capital, from there, from this one, and the other half from the other parent, which is going to be T small. Now let's try the same for the other plant. It will also carry one factor from his first parent and the other factor from the other parent. So it's going to be T capital from here, from this parent, and the same T small from there. The same continues with the other two seeds, with the other two plants. Okay. So now we have an offspring or a first generation carrying only T capital and T small. What is this? Well, the T capital represents the dominant trait, which is tallness, dominant trait, while the T small represents the weak trait, which is the recessive one. But from the experiment, let me share my screen again. You learned that the first generation were all tall plants, which means that only the tall factor or the dominant trait, which is responsible for being tall, is the one that was expressed or the one that appeared most. Back to the white screen. And that's because recessive traits will only appear if there are two factors of recessive trait, which we found in the second generation. So he took or left the first generation to self-pollinate, which means that now it will carry both factors, T capital and T small, right? The same for the other parent will carry one T capital and one T small. So he led them to, again, self-pollinate and waited for the offsprings to appear or the seeds to grow. Again, each plant will take half of the chromosomes from the mother and the other half from the father. So let's see, the first plant will take one half from the first parent and the second one from the second parent, which is going to be two T capitals. This one will carry T capital from first parent and T small from the other one. We also start with capital letters. The third plant will carry T capital, while the other one will have T small, while the last plant will carry two T small. Can you see that? And that was the only plant that carried the recessive trait for shortness. It was short plant. Because the other three had two factors, whether it was two dominant traits like the first one here, or one dominant and one recessive like the other two. The dominant trait will appear even if there's only one factor of it, like in here, one T capital, which means this is a dominant trait, so it's only one factor in there. That's why it appeared the most, while the recessive trait will only appear if the two factors are recessive traits. Do you guys get it? Let me take you to the study sheet. So in here we learned about the inherited traits and that those are the features or characteristics that pass to us from our parents, like the hair color, the eye color, skin color, freckles, the hair texture, if it's smooth or if it's curly, having an attached or free ear loop, and of course some behaviors like using your right hand or left hand. Can you see these puppies? Well, all of them are coming from the same parent, but some of them look the same, others look different, like the black one and the white one. Why do we have these different traits again? Because of the variation during to the sexual reproduction between both parents. Who was interested in the genetics or studying about genes is Grigor Mendel, and that's why he started doing his experiments on the plants. So he noticed that the pea plants were either short or tall. He was so interested why they only make these two kinds or these two plants. So he decided to do it for the first time is to cross-pollinate between a tall plant and a short plant. What he found out, as we said, is that the tall first generation were all tall plants, as you can see, while the second generation had three of them were tall and only one was short. So from this point, he understood that characteristics is controlled by a pair of factors. The features, how we look, how we act, is controlled by a pair of factors. Two factors. Each parent passes one of these factors to the offspring, which means we take half of our genes from the mother and the other half from the father, as we said. Let me reshare my screen because I forgot to share my screen now. Let me take you to the study sheet again. So in here, we learned about the inherited trait, as we said, okay, and how these dogs are all from the same parents, but they still look different. Three of them look the same, while two of them look different. Why do we have these variations? It's because the genes, guys, the factors that are passed to us from our parents. Gregor Mendel was interested in that, and he noticed that pea plants only grow in tall or short plants. So, for the first time, he cross-pollinated those both plants, short and tall plant, to produce a new generation, which was the first generation in his experiment, and he noticed that all of them were tall. And then he self-pollinated them, like he led them to self-fertilize or self-pollinate, and discovered that three of them were tall and only was short, which means that the short trait still passed to the first generation, but it was hidden because shortness is not a strong trait. It's a recessive one, so it will not appear because it still have a dominant trait with it. So he discovered that characteristics or the features are controlled by a pair of factors. We had we have one of them from the mother and the other one from the father. The way these factors combine together is what actually controls how we will appear. Like we will have a brown eyes, a blue eyes, colored hair, or maybe a black hair. Mendel learned that traits can skip generations. So like in here, the short traits skipped the first generation, and appeared in the second one. So we have two types of traits, dominant trait and recessive trait. You guys learned that the dominant trait will always be expressed as capital letters. So if two T capitals, that means two dominant traits, while one T capital, one T small means this is a dominant trait, the T capital, and T small represents the recessive trait. But since dominant trait is found in here, it will only appear, while the recessive trait will be hidden. The recessive trait will only appear if both of the factors are actually recessive, or both of them are small letters, like 2T small. Okay, so in here it says that if both dominant factor and recessive factors are present, the dominant trait will be the only one to appear. Hope you guys understood today's session. Still, if you have any questions, you can of course write them and we will discuss them together, inshallah, in the next session. See you soon. Bye.